Have you ever walked into a room and instantly felt uneasy, even though everything looked perfectly normal? Or found yourself forming an opinion about someone moments after meeting them, without really knowing why? These moments aren't just intuition. They're glimpses into a deeper layer of the human mind. Welcome to the realm of the subconscious. The subconscious mind is not just a passive archive of thoughts and memories. It's a silent architect, constantly shaping our perceptions, emotions, and behaviors without our conscious permission. At any given moment, our brains are processing millions of bits of information: sounds, smells, facial expressions, micro-movements, cultural cues, all absorbed in the background. Our conscious mind can only handle a fraction of this data, so the rest is delegated to the subconscious, where patterns are formed, judgments are made, and biases begin to take root. One key process in this hidden realm is implicit memory. Unlike explicit memory, the things we consciously recall, like your best friend's birthday or the capital of France, implicit memory works behind the scenes. It's how we know how to ride a bike, recognize a familiar face, or react defensively to something that feels like a past threat, even if we can't explain why. Now, imagine these hidden memories, shaped by years of experiences, media exposure, and cultural messaging, subtly influencing how we respond to people, ideas, and situations. This is subconscious bias. It shows up in everyday life more than we realize, like choosing a job candidate who feels like a good fit, even though another applicant had better qualifications, or assuming someone is trustworthy just because they look like someone we know, or locking your car door at a red light, not because of any real threat, but because of a split-second judgment formed by decades of cultural conditioning. These biases are often not malicious. In fact, they're designed to keep us safe, to simplify decisions in a complex world. But the problem is, they're invisible. They operate below awareness, and when left unexamined, they can distort reality. In this video, we're going to uncover how these biases form, how they shape our daily lives, and most importantly, what we can do about them. Because understanding the subconscious isn't just a psychological curiosity. It's a powerful step towards self-awareness, better decision-making, and a more compassionate world. Let's dive deeper. Subconscious bias isn't just a quirky mental trick. It has real consequences. It subtly influences how we judge others, who we trust, what we believe, and sometimes even how we value ourselves. Let's start with decision-making. Imagine a hiring manager reviewing dozens of resumes. All candidates are qualified, yet somehow one applicant just feels right. This gut feeling, though seemingly intuitive, may actually stem from subconscious bias. Maybe the candidate's name sounds familiar, or they attended the same university as the manager. It's not logic at play, it's an unconscious association. These biases can lead to favoritism, but worse, they can also lead to discrimination. In countless studies, identical resumes sent out under different names, say Emily versus Lakeisha, or Greg versus Jamal, received dramatically different response rates. Why? The only difference is the name. The subconscious has already made a judgment. This brings us to stereotyping and prejudice. We often think of prejudice as an overt act of hate or ignorance, but more often it's invisible. It's the subtle lowering of expectations for someone because of their age, gender, appearance, or accent. It's assuming a woman is less assertive or an older person less capable before they even speak. These aren't conscious decisions. They're knee-jerk reactions, fed by years of social messaging we've absorbed without question. And then there's the in-group versus out-group effect, a deeply rooted psychological phenomenon. Human beings are wired to seek belonging. It's part of our evolutionary survival. But this desire to belong also divides. We form in-groups, people who look like us, think like us, or share our values. and we instinctively show them more empathy and trust. Meanwhile, we're more skeptical, dismissive, or even fearful of those in the out group, even when they pose no threat. This can affect everything, from school performance and healthcare outcomes to workplace dynamics and policing. In one experiment, teachers who were told certain students were gifted, even though the label was randomly assigned, ended up unconsciously treating them better. The result: those students performed significantly better by the end of the year. It wasn't about intelligence, it was about expectation shaped by bias. So what does this mean? It means our subconscious mind, while powerful, can also be deeply flawed. Left unchecked, these hidden biases can distort our sense of fairness, compromise our integrity, and damage relationships, both personal and societal. But there's hope, because what can be understood can be changed. To do that, we need to understand what's happening in the brain itself. Let's explore the science behind subconscious bias. So how exactly does the brain generate these subconscious biases? The answer lies in how we process and store information. Our brains are pattern recognition machines. Every day we're bombarded with an overwhelming amount of stimuli. So to make sense of it all, the brain creates shortcuts. These shortcuts are called heuristics, mental rules of thumb that help us make quick decisions. Most of the time, heuristics are incredibly useful. They let us drive a car, hold a conversation, or recognize danger, all without overthinking. But they also open the door to bias. Now here's where science offers a clearer view. Functional MRI scans have shown that certain areas of the brain light up when people are exposed to faces of different races, genders, or social groups. The amygdala, which is involved in emotion and threat detection, can activate more strongly in response to out-group members, especially if someone has had limited exposure to diversity. At the same time, the prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational thought and self-control, can override these initial responses. This tells us something important. Bias may begin automatically, but conscious effort can interrupt it. Another major factor? Social conditioning. From the time we're children, we absorb cultural messages about what's beautiful, who's trustworthy, what roles people should play. These messages come from parents, media, education, and institutions. Over time, they accumulate, shaping our implicit associations. Take media, for instance. Repeated exposure to certain stereotypes, such as associating authority with men or crime with people of color, can wire those associations into the subconscious, even if we consciously reject them. The result is an internal contradiction. Our values say one thing, but our reflexes say another. To help people recognize and measure these hidden biases, psychologists developed the Implicit Association Test, or IAT. The IAT works by measuring how quickly people associate different concepts, for example, good and white versus good and black, or leader and male versus leader and female. The idea is that quicker associations reveal underlying preferences, and the results. Most people show at least some level of implicit bias, even those who are actively committed to equality. But here's the key. Knowing that you have subconscious bias doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you human. The real challenge isn't eliminating bias completely. It's becoming aware of it and learning how to manage it. And that's exactly what we'll explore next. How do we overcome these hidden mental filters? And how do we train our brains to see more clearly? Let's move into the practical side, recognizing and reshaping subconscious bias. Now that we understand how subconscious bias forms and how it operates in the brain, the question becomes, what can we do about it? The first step is awareness. Bias thrives in the dark. It's most powerful when it goes unnoticed. But once we shine a light on it, once we name it, observe it, and reflect on it, its grip starts to loosen. This is where self-awareness becomes a superpower. Start by paying attention to your own reactions. Notice who you feel drawn to, who you trust, who you overlook. Ask yourself why. Is it based on facts or feelings? Are you responding to the person in front of you or to an unconscious pattern from your past? It helps to reflect on moments of discomfort, that subtle hesitation, that instant judgment. Those are clues. Next, cultivate curiosity over defensiveness. We all have blind spots. Admitting that doesn't make us weak, it makes us wise. Instead of rushing to prove you're not biased, try to explore how bias may be showing up in your thoughts and choices. Not from a place of guilt, but from a desire to grow. Another powerful strategy is exposure to diversity. The more we engage with people who are different from us, in age, background, culture, or perspective, the more we break down unconscious assumptions. Real connection humanizes others. It expands empathy, and it rewires the brain. Even passive exposure matters. What books are you reading? What shows are you watching? What voices are influencing your worldview? Every piece of media contributes to the subconscious narrative you carry. Mindfulness and introspection also play a role. Practices like meditation, journaling, and contemplative thinking help slow the mind down. They create a space between stimulus and response, allowing you to choose your reaction rather than be controlled by it. In that space, transformation is possible. Institutions can also help. Workplaces, schools, and public systems can implement training programs, not just one-off workshops, but long-term initiatives that focus on empathy, perspective-taking, and bias interruption. The goal isn't to point fingers. It's to build cultures of awareness and accountability. And let's not forget the power of dialogue. Open conversations about bias, when handled with humility and care, can be healing. They allow us to see the world through someone else's eyes, and they remind us that this work is not just about changing ourselves, but about creating environments where everyone feels seen, heard, and valued. Overcoming subconscious bias isn't about perfection. It's about progress. It's about choosing to be more conscious in a world that often runs on autopilot. And in that choice, we reclaim a deeper sense of humanity. As we move deeper into the 21st century, our understanding of the human mind is evolving faster than ever. Advancements in neuroscience, machine learning, and psychology are opening new doors into the mysteries of subconscious bias. What once seemed intangible is now being mapped, measured, and decoded. With new technologies like real-time brain imaging, researchers can now observe the exact moment a bias is triggered and which areas of the brain are involved. Artificial intelligence is being used to identify patterns in language, behavior, and decision-making that reflect unconscious prejudice. And virtual reality is being tested as a tool to help people experience life from another perspective, building empathy in ways words alone cannot. The possibilities are promising. But they also raise important ethical questions. If we can measure bias, should it be used in hiring, in law enforcement, in politics? How do we ensure that this knowledge empowers rather than controls, that it liberates rather than labels? The answers aren't simple, but what's clear is this. The more we understand the inner workings of the mind, the more responsibility we have to use that knowledge wisely. Subconscious bias research is not just a scientific endeavor, it's a moral one. It calls us to look inward with honesty and outward with compassion. It challenges us to confront the comfortable stories we tell ourselves and to replace them with something more true. Imagine a world where our differences aren't feared, but celebrated, where equity isn't an exception, but a norm, where every person has the chance to be seen not through the lens of a stereotype, but as a full, complex, and worthy human being. That future isn't out of reach. It begins with awareness. It deepens with education. And it grows through the daily choices we make to become more conscious of ourselves, of others, and of the invisible forces that shape our world. Because when we understand the power of subconscious bias, we begin to reclaim the power to change it. Not perfectly, not instantly, but one moment of awareness at a time. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the hidden mind. If this video resonated with you, share it with someone who might benefit. Let's keep the conversation going, because together we can build a more mindful, inclusive, and awakened world. Until next time, stay curious, stay conscious. See you in the next video.